When we think about survival in nature, forests usually seem like the safer bet. They provide shelter, food, and water, everything you need to stay alive. Deserts, on the other hand, are typically harsh, unforgiving environments where water is scarce and temperatures swing wildly. But there was one strange period in Earth's history where this logic was completely flipped on its head. A time when venturing into a forest might have been the last mistake you'd ever make, while the barren deserts offered your best shot at survival. I'm talking about the Lopingian Epoch, the final chapter of the Permian period that played out roughly 259 to 252 million years ago. This was an era so far back in time that dinosaurs hadn't even evolved yet. It was a world that would be completely alien to us today. Just to give you an idea of how different things were, the days were shorter back then. The moon orbited closer to Earth, making each day only about 22 hours long instead of our current 24. And if you're picturing continents like we have today, forget it. Most of Earth's land was fused together into a massive supercontinent called Pangea. This wasn't just a few countries connected, we're talking about Africa, the Americas, Antarctica, India, Australia, and parts of Europe all joined together in one giant landmass. To the east of Pangea, you'd find some decent-sized islands, one made up of present-day Siberia, Kazakhstan, and North China, while another to the south contained South China and parts of Southeast Asia. Turkey, Iran, and Tibet were also islands, surrounded by ancient oceans. But the most mind-boggling feature of this world was the super-ocean that lay west of Pangea, Panthalassa. This prehistoric ocean was absolutely massive, covering more than 60% of Earth's surface and was twice the size of today's Pacific Ocean. Just try to wrap your head around that, an ocean twice the size of the Pacific. Now, you might think that with such a massive ocean, the real dangers would be lurking in the water. That's usually how it works in nature, right? The deeper and bigger the water, the scarier the creatures. But during the Lopingian, this rule was completely reversed. The oceans during this time were relatively tame. Sure, there were sharks. They'd already been around for 200 million years by then. But the truly terrifying prehistoric sharks like Helicoprion, with its bizarre spiral-toothed jaw, had already gone extinct by the Lopingian. The sharks swimming around were much smaller, typically only growing to about 6.5 feet long at most, comparable to modern leopard sharks. And their teeth were designed for eating soft prey like squids, not for tearing through bone. Other sea creatures weren't doing much better. The Eurypterids, or sea scorpions, which had once been diverse and gigantic, were barely hanging on with just 2 genera left, neither particularly large or threatening. Trilobites, ammonoids, and cephalopods were around but not in great numbers or sizes. This relative calmness in the oceans was partly due to the Capitanian mass extinction that had occurred about 2 million years earlier. It's not as famous as the dinosaur-killing asteroid, but it was actually more deadly than both the KT extinction and the Triassic-Jurassic extinction combined. Marine life took the hardest hit, leaving the oceans of the Lopingian relatively empty of large predators. So if the oceans were relatively safe, what made the land so terrifying? In a word, Gorgonopsids. The Capitanian extinction had wiped out the previous rulers of the land, the Dinocephalians, leaving a power vacuum that was quickly filled by some of the most nightmarish predators to ever walk the earth. Gorgonopsids were so horrifying that when paleontologists first discovered them in 1876, they named them after the Gorgons of Greek mythology, the snake-haired monsters that could turn people to stone with a glance. These weren't dinosaurs or mammals, but the Therapsids, a group more closely related to mammals than reptiles, but still distinct from both. What made Gorgonopsids special was that they were among the first saber-toothed predators to evolve, with long, razor-sharp canine teeth that could slice through flesh with ease. The early Gorgonopsids had been small, no larger than a human foot. But by the Lopingian, they had evolved into absolute monsters. The king of them all was Inostrancevia, the largest land predator of the late Permian. The biggest specimens reached over 11 feet long and weighed more than 1,000 pounds, about the size of a large bear, though average individuals were more tiger-sized. Inostrancevia wasn't just big, it was built for killing. It had sturdy, long limbs that made it both durable and surprisingly fast. Its upper canines were enormous, about 6 inches long, and were curved and serrated, designed to slice through flesh and cause massive blood loss. We're not entirely sure how it hunted, but it either went for the neck like a modern big cat or used a bite-and-run strategy, letting accumulated blood loss and shock eventually bring down its prey. And here's the really scary part. Inostrancevia was widespread, with fossils found in parts of Africa, Asia, and European Russia. It thrived in multiple environments, from warm flood plains in South Africa to cold arid deserts in Russia. Some paleontologists think it might have even had fur to survive in colder regions. But Inostrancevia wasn't alone. Dozens of other Gorgonopsid species prowled the Lopingian world. European Russia was home to many, including the smaller Pravoslavlevia and the medium-sized Sushigorgon. But South Africa was even worse, with an entire subfamily of giant Gorgonopsids that had evolved independently alongside Inostrancevia, the Rubidgeinae. While Inostrancevia was the single largest Gorgonopsid, the Rubidgeinae were on average the largest family. They had robust skulls with deeply serrated teeth that were possibly even better at cutting than Inostrancevia. One member, Rubidgea atrox, grew up to 10 feet long and had a skull that made up over 15% of its total body length. Despite this massive head, it didn't have a particularly strong bite, only about 20% more powerful than a wolf's. But it didn't need to. Its teeth were so well designed they could pierce through flesh and tough hide with minimal force. Evidence suggests that Rubidgea often lived alongside other members of its subfamily, 9 different genera in total, and possibly even coexisted with Inostrancevia in late Permian South Africa. Imagine that. Multiple species of saber-toothed predators, all competing in the same ecosystem. If Gorgonopsids weren't enough, the Lopingian was home to many other predators too. The Therocephalians were another group of the Therapsids that were diverse and widespread. While they looked somewhat similar to Gorgonopsids with large skulls, they had broader, deeper skulls, smaller straight teeth, shorter bodies, and more compact builds. Some Therocephalians, like the dog-sized Echebopsis and Oichambergia, may have been venomous, possibly the first land vertebrates to evolve venom. Others, like the Ichthyosuchids, were semi-aquatic. But the standout was Moschorhinus, a jaguar-sized predator with a lion-sized head full of sharp conical teeth. It likely hunted by pinning prey down with its powerful forelimbs before tearing into them with its teeth and jaws. There were even larger Therocephalians, like Megawhaitsia, a 9-foot-long predator from European Russia that may have used venom to kill large dicynodonts. Beyond the Therapsids, there were crocodile-like protosuchids with giant needle-like teeth, and the armored Croniosuchians. Fresh water was especially dangerous due to primitive amphibians that evolved to be specialized ambush hunters. The largest was Uranocentodon, a 13-foot behemoth that lived in South Africa alongside the Gorgonopsids and Therocephalians. Of course, herbivores existed too. They had to, or there would be nothing for all these predators to eat. Dicynodonts, captarinids, and para-reptiles roamed across Pangea. Some, like the badger to pig-sized Lystrosaurus, dug burrows for protection. Others, like the pareiasaurs, evolved into armored tanks similar to ankylosaurs but without the club tails. Scutosaurus, one of the largest Lopingian animals, weighed over 1.2 tons and had armor so thick and muscles so dense that it was practically impenetrable. At least you didn't have to worry about looking up during the Lopingian. Unlike the Mesozoic with its flying pterosaurs, the Permian skies were relatively safe. The largest flying animals were probably the Weigeltosaurids, a family of gliding reptiles no bigger than a large bat. But what really made the Lopingian land so harsh wasn't just the predators, it was the environment itself. The average temperature was around 95 degrees Fahrenheit, twice as hot as today. Severe aridity plagued the supercontinent, creating massive deserts near the equator where life was scarce. To the north, the central Pangean mountains created areas prone to severe droughts. And yet, as harsh as this climate was, it was mild compared to what came next. Around 252 million years ago, the Permian ended with the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history, the Great Dying. Triggered by massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia, this catastrophe spewed enough carbon dioxide and sulfur to heat the planet even more, with some areas reaching temperatures comparable to Death Valley's hottest month year-round. Oxygen levels plummeted, and the ozone layer was damaged, increasing ultraviolet radiation by up to 5,000% in some areas. By the time it was over, 57% of all biological families and 83% of genera had gone extinct. For comparison, the extinction that killed the dinosaurs only wiped out about 17% of biological families. Interestingly, even during this apocalyptic event, the water remained safer than land. Ocean temperatures increased to what we'd consider hot tub levels, but at least you wouldn't burn to a crisp like you might on land. So there you have it, the Lopingian epoch, perhaps the only time in Earth's history when the deserts were actually safer than the forests. A world where the oceans were relatively empty of large predators, while the land was dominated by saber-toothed monsters and oppressive heat. A strange, alien world that reminds us just how much our planet has changed over its long history.